Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I travel frequently for work as a sales representative, which means I spend a lot of time in airports. After doing this for 5 years, I've gotten pretty good at the whole airport routine. I know exactly what to pack, how to organize my bags for security, and most importantly, I always arrive early to avoid any stress about making my flight. This morning I was heading to an important client meeting in another state. I had arrived at the airport 2 hours before my flight. As usual, the security line was longer than normal, probably because it was the start of spring break season. We all had to queue around a corner to avoid blocking the main walkway, but everyone was being patient and orderly about it. I was just passing the corner when this older woman, probably in her mid-60s, came strutting up with her rolling carry-on and handbag. Instead of going to the back of the line like everyone else, she just stepped right in front of me and dropped her carry-on. I politely told her that the line actually started at the back, pointing to show her where it ended. She barely looked at me over her shoulder and told me that she was in a hurry, and that young people like me could wait. She then just walked away toward the front of the security checkpoint, leaving her bags behind. She clearly expected everyone to just push her stuff along while she skipped the entire line. I called out to her, telling her she couldn't just leave her bags there. She just waved her hand dismissively without even turning around. At first, I did push her bags along with mine, I guess out of habit or politeness. But after a few minutes, I started getting more and more irritated. Here we all were, waiting patiently in line, while this woman thought she was too special to follow the rules like everyone else. The woman behind me tapped my shoulder and asked if the old woman had really just done that. I confirmed that yes, she had. The woman expressed her frustration, mentioning that she'd already been standing in line for 20 minutes. That's when I decided I'd had enough. When it came time to push the bags forward again, I simply moved mine around hers and continued on. The woman behind me saw what I did and did the same thing. Soon, the entitled woman's bags were just sitting there, several feet behind everyone else's. I went through security without any problems. When I was putting my shoes back on, I saw the old woman standing by the conveyor belt exit, looking increasingly panicked as she watched other people's bags come through, but not hers. She spotted me and walked over, demanding to know where her bags were and insisting that I had been right behind her. I told her she must have me confused with someone else. She argued back, saying she specifically remembered putting her bags in front of me. I maintained my position, telling her I'd been waiting in line for 30 minutes and would remember if someone had given me their bags to watch. I suggested she check with the security staff. I picked up my belongings and walked away while she started arguing with a security officer. As I headed to my gate, I could hear her voice getting more shrill as she protested when they told her the bags were still back where she'd left them. She demanded to know why no one had told her. The last thing I saw was her having to walk all the way back to where her bags were still sitting, exactly where she'd left them, and now she had to wait in the full length of the line, which had gotten even longer. I made it to my meeting with plenty of time to spare. I'd like to think she learned something about respecting other people's time that day, but somehow I doubt it. At least she got a taste of what happens when you assume everyone else exists to serve you. This all started about 6 months ago. I had just finished installing this beautiful ornate metal fence around my property. It wasn't cheap, cost me nearly $15,000, but it was worth every penny. The craftsmanship was exceptional, with intricate metal work that really elevated the whole neighborhood's appearance. I had been saving up for it for 2 years, working overtime at my accounting job to make it happen. My neighbor to the right had always been, let's call him, difficult. He'd constantly complain about everything. My lawn being too green, making his look bad, my car being too clean, showing off. You name it. When I installed the fence, he threw a fit about how it made his wooden fence look like trash. Well, maybe if he maintained his property better. Anyway, my family and I had planned a 3-week vacation to Europe, our first big trip together. We'd been planning it for months, and everything was set. Before leaving, I made sure everything was secure, asked other neighbors to keep an eye on things, and set up our security cameras. What happened next still makes my blood boil. We were having dinner at our hotel in Paris when I got a message from my neighbor across the street. They warned me that something strange was happening with my fence and suggested I check my security cameras. When I asked for clarification, they explained that my next-door neighbor was taking it down with a whole crew. I immediately checked my cameras, but they had been tampered with, turned away from the fence. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I called another neighbor, who confirmed my fears. They explained that my difficult neighbor had hired contractors to remove my metal fence and install a wooden one, claiming to everyone that the homeowners association had ordered it. I tried calling my difficult neighbor. When confronted, he claimed that the homeowners association had sent a violation notice, insisting the metal fence wasn't approved. He had the audacity to claim they were threatening to put a lien on both our houses if it wasn't removed within the week. He even tried to play it off as if he was doing me a favor. When I told him this was impossible since I had all the proper approvals, he just brushed me off, saying they had changed their minds and that he was handling it. I immediately called the homeowners association president. They were shocked by my query and confirmed that not only had they not issued any violations, but they had actually used pictures of my fence in their newsletter as an example of excellent property improvement. I cut my vacation short and flew back home. What I found was infuriating. My beautiful metal fence was gone, replaced with the cheapest, most horrible-looking wooden fence I'd ever seen. Parts of it were literally held together with zip ties. When I confronted my neighbor again, demanding to know where my fence was, he tried to stick to his homeowners association story. When I told him I'd already spoken with them, he tried to deflect, telling me I should be grateful he provided the replacement. When I asked where he'd sold it, he denied everything. But I had done my homework. Before confronting him, I got in security footage from 3 different neighbors showing the entire removal process. I'd also tracked down the scrap metal dealer where he'd sold my fence. The dealer still had the transaction records, $20,000 in cash. I called the police right there. The officer was incredulous as I explained how my neighbor had stolen my fence while I was on vacation and sold it. I provided them with the video evidence and sale records. I also called my lawyer, who was all too happy to file suit. The police arrested him for grand theft and destruction of property. The civil suit was even better. The judge ordered him to pay me $35,000 in damages plus legal fees. He couldn't afford it. His house went up for sale within a week. He's now renting a small apartment in another city and still dealing with the criminal charges. The new neighbors are lovely people who actually asked permission before installing their garden. Oh, and I got an even better fence installed, this time with security cameras built right into the posts. Let's see someone try to steal that. I never expected my son to become the talk of the school, especially not because of his anxiety. As a single parent, I've always tried my best to support him through his struggles. His anxiety started showing up around age 7, and it really affected how he saw himself. He was always that quiet kid who kept to himself, but he was incredibly smart and had a sharp wit when he felt comfortable enough to show it. When we had to move just before his 3rd grade year, it hit him pretty hard. New environment, new faces, new everything. It was exactly what someone with anxiety didn't need. I tried everything I could to make the transition easier, but sometimes as a parent, you just have to watch your kid navigate through rough waters on their own. The incident happened when he was in 4th grade. He'd been having a rough day. I could tell from his behavior that morning. He barely touched his breakfast and kept checking his backpack over and over, making sure he hadn't forgotten anything. I got a call from the school around lunchtime. The principal's secretary called to inform me that they needed me to come in for a meeting regarding an incident with my son. My heart sank. As any parent of an anxious child knows, these calls usually don't mean anything good. When I arrived at the school, I found my son sitting outside the principal's office, but surprisingly, he didn't look upset. If anything, there was a hint of satisfaction in his expression. The principal brought us both into his office and explained what had happened. Apparently, my son had been at his locker between classes, doing what he sometimes does when his anxiety kicks in, talking to himself to let out his feelings. He was murmuring about how no one wanted him around and how no one liked him. Two girls who were known troublemakers overheard him. According to several witnesses, the two girls started mocking him loudly. They cruelly echoed his words back at him, telling him that he was right, nobody liked him, and nobody ever would. At this point, I was ready to jump out my chair, but then the principal continued with what happened next. He explained how my son had turned around, looked these girls straight in the eye, and delivered an unexpected response. He told them that he was sorry if they thought he had been talking to them because he only talked to pretty girls, so it obviously wasn't them he was addressing. The principal described how the whole way had erupted in laughter, not at my son, but at the two girls who had tried to humiliate him. Apparently, my son just got his books and walked to class while these two bullies stood there, faces red, as other students pointed and laughed at them. The principal was trying to maintain a serious expression as he told me this, but I could see he was struggling to keep a straight face. He formally told me that my son's words could be considered inappropriate and could fall under bullying behavior. When I asked about disciplinary action, he explained that after reviewing the situation and speaking with witnesses, they decided not to take any action. He confided that these particular girls had a history of picking on other students, and in this case, the insults had essentially canceled each other out. I nodded, trying to maintain a properly concerned parent expression, but inside I was beaming with pride. After finishing the official part of our meeting, the principal leaned forward in his chair and spoke more personally. He confided that, as a parent himself, he was actually very proud of my son's ability to stand up for himself. He explained that those girls had been making other students miserable for months, but nobody had ever had the courage to stand up to them like that. I expressed my initial uncertainty about how to react to the call, and he assured me that while they appreciated my son defending himself, they still needed to maintain a respectful environment. I agreed completely with this sentiment. Later that evening, I had a talk with my son about the incident. He expressed worry that I'd be angry, but instead I told him how proud I was that he stood up for himself. We discussed the importance of not making a habit of insulting others, but I made sure he understood that defending himself was always okay. Those two girls never bothered him again. In fact, I heard that they became much less aggressive toward other students after that day. My son still deals with anxiety, but that day marked a turning point for him. He realized that having anxiety didn't mean he had to be a victim and that he was stronger than he thought. He's in high school now, and while he's still on the quiet side, he carries himself with a confidence that makes me incredibly proud. I never wanted to be that kind of boss. You know, the one who rules with an iron fist and makes everyone walk on eggshells. When I got promoted to department manager 6 months ago, I was determined to create an environment where everyone felt heard and valued. I had worked my way up from an entry-level position over 8 years, started as a junior analyst, became a team lead, then project manager, and finally department manager. Every promotion was earned through countless late nights, successful projects, and consistently exceeding targets. My predecessor had recommended me for the position before retiring, citing my track record and leadership potential. The transition seemed smooth at first. My team of 12 appeared supportive, though I noticed some resistance from the more senior members who had also applied for the position. Still, I maintained an open-door policy, regularly asked for feedback, and made sure to acknowledge everyone's contributions. That's why discovering the Slack channel felt like a punch to the gut. It happened during a routine IT audit. Our IT support lead was helping me set up some new security permissions when we stumbled upon a private channel called Tea Time. The name seemed innocent enough, but something about it caught my eye. It wasn't listed in our official company channels. I asked the IT support lead about the channel's purpose. He said he'd checked the permissions, noting it seemed strange as it wasn't on their approved list. He pulled it up and there it was. Months of conversations, all about me. The latest message was from just an hour ago. In the messages, I watched as my team tore apart everything I did. The senior analyst was complaining about having to document processes, comparing it to being treated like children. The project coordinator agreed, mocking my initiative to standardize workflows despite their 8 years of experience. The team lead accused me of stealing credit for Q3 results, claiming the projects were already in motion before I became manager. Marketing specialist called me fake, twisting my open door policy into a way to spy on everyone. The thread went on and on. They mocked my clothes, my voice, how I ran meetings, even made fun of how I always brought lunch from home instead of joining their lunch outings. Every small interaction had been twisted into something negative. I felt sick to my stomach, but I kept scrolling. 10 of my 12 team members were active participants. Only my newest hire and one junior analyst weren't part of the channel. The IT support lead nervously suggested reporting it to IT security, but I told him to wait and let me handle it. I spent that night planning my approach. I could have fired them all. Our company policy clearly prohibited using company communication tools for harassment, but that would mean losing 80% of my department overnight. Instead, I decided to make them face their actions. The next morning, I sent a department-wide meeting invitation for 2 p.m. Subject, team, communication review. I arrived early and set everything up. When everyone filed in, I could see them exchanging knowing looks, probably thinking this was another one of my unnecessary meetings. I started the meeting by announcing we would review some interesting team communications I had discovered. When I clicked the button and the Slack channel appeared on the screen, I watched the color drain from their faces. I told them that I had invited human resources to join us to review how their harassment policies were being followed. Right on cue, the human resources director walked in and panic visibly set in across the room. I suggested we start from the beginning, scrolling to their messages from 3 months ago when I announced the process documentation initiative. When I asked if anyone wanted to explain their comments directly, the room fell silent. Finally, the senior analyst weakly tried to dismiss it as just venting. I challenged that explanation, bringing up their comments about my executive presentation, the very one where I had specifically credited each team member and even brought several of them to present their own sections. They squirmed in their seats as I continued scrolling. The human resources director stepped in to state that this was a clear violation of their code of conduct, announcing that everyone involved would be placed on a performance improvement plan immediately. I took a moment to make my position clear, explaining how I had earned my position through hard work, not office politics, and reminded them that my open door policy had been genuine and literally practiced every day. When the project coordinator tried to make excuses, I cut them off, pointing out that they were only sorry about getting caught. I then laid out the consequences, formal written warnings, performance improvement plans, archiving the channel for documentation, and mandatory one-on-one meetings with human resources to discuss professional conduct. As I gathered my things to leave, I announced one final change, a department restructuring. Since they thought process documentation was unnecessary, they would now have to document their entire workflows in detail, with weekly reviews. I made it clear that anyone who felt this was beneath them was welcome to resign. The human resources director stayed behind to schedule their meetings. 3 people resigned that week. The rest, they're still here doing their jobs, documenting everything, and participation in team meetings has never been higher. The passive-aggressive behavior stopped overnight. I still bring my lunch to work, but now I eat it in my office with my door closed. Some trust just can't be rebuilt. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.